they're going for a very horizontal like work culture. 과장, 차장, like 팀장, a lot of tight, like don't try to be too Korean. Like if you're a foreigner, Korea is a pretty good place to just have a good balance. As long as you know you're aware of your own limitations. Just be you, like be competent. Okay, you don't have to change yourself.
Hello, welcome back to How is Korea? My name is Brian, and today we have another exciting topic to talk about, which is working in Korea. And I have a special guest here today, Beth.
Hi, I'm Beth and Hee Hong. I am a copy editor at the Korea Herald.
And so we're excited to talk about some of the questions you may have about working in Korea. So, can you tell us a little bit about your career path in Korea?
I grew up in Vancouver, Canada, and I did my undergraduate degree in political science, and I have a master's in journalism. And I came to Korea 9 years ago in 2013 to teach English because I wanted to be a reporter here, but my Korean wasn't very good. So I taught English in the countryside at like public schools for 2 years. Then I taught at a private elementary school in Seoul for 5 years. And then I was going to go back to Canada to get my teaching license. But because of COVID in 2020, at the time, I worked for 6 months at a wine bar in Hannam-dong as a part-time job. True story.
Wow.
I became a semi-natural wine expert. Then I got a real job at a translation company, translating subtitles and documents and doing some simultaneous interpretation. And I did 3 months at a EFL content development company in Daechidong, and that was not for me. So I am now working as a copy editor at the Korea Herald. Yeah, it's my original, like major, I guess, journalism. So I'm kind of back in a really big circle.
Working in so many different fields, education, to journalism, to wine bar, you said. Was there any specific working culture in Korea that struck you the most?
So I think that I've experienced working with like a team of mostly foreigners as an English teacher. And then I've also experienced working in like just a straight up Korean company, like, and where I'm like literally one out of maybe 3 other foreign staff. And then now I'm working in a kind of a hybrid, like a lot of my coworkers at the Korea Herald are reporters that have studied abroad but are actual Korean citizens. My copy editor coworkers are all foreigners. So like I feel like I've had kind of a diverse mix of them all. I really like my current job. Like I think that the hybrid really fits me well because people understand my diaspora kind of identity. I don't really need to explain myself. I have some friends and family, like relatives that work in really big companies, and the big businesses are mostly very well paid and they let you go home on time. Like whatever you saw that Netflix drama Misang is not really I think accurate. Like actually a lot of big companies are very progressive now and like really give you they're not as strict about you staying past your contractual hours. From what I've heard, I think the working culture in Korea at big companies is quite fine. Like it's comparable to any other developed country. That being said, I've worked at small companies, like small medium size companies, and there I think the culture can really vary. Like I think it's really, really variable based on the people who are there. And at the translation company, which was like the smallest I think I've worked at, it was definitely a little bit more traditional, I would say. The person above me was a bit older and had some pretty strong ideas about, like working culture. It wasn't really suited for me because I do my job and go home. And then I worked at that EFL content development company. Right. And it was a slightly bigger company, but again, it was a bit more Korean. There was a lot of hierarchy that I had to get used to, and like company culture also really varies depending on the people there and how it's been formed, and so it was a little difficult for me to get used to. And again, now with Korea Herald, I'm pretty happy because I can speak English and also Korean and just do my own project like a books podcast. So yeah, I think that overall I've experienced a lot. I would say I've found my happy place for now. Yeah.
And it sounds like there's a lot of freedom with the work that you do right now. But in a traditional sense, I think you were referring to maybe long hours or expectations for 회식, which is the team meals after work and things like that. Is that, what would you say?
Yeah, and I think the Korean government actually changed the law a few years ago about like they limited the maximum number of hours that you could work at a big company, and so that's been really good. And so I think that, well, this is probably leading into your next question, but like the phrase like work-life balance, whatabel in Korea is like really becoming very trendy, and like there is like growing awareness of healthy work and life balance. So yeah, I think it's getting better in Korea.
So what does work-life balance look like for you in Korea?
I mean, it's pretty standard. I think it's like I come in on time, do my work, and go home when I'm done, and when my time is over, like as it says on my contract. Yeah, that's one thing about Korean working culture. Sometimes contracts are very open to interpretation.
Yeah?
Yeah, depending on the company you're with. Some companies really respect your contract, but then some others don't. And I think that at my company now, I'm not really pushed to do anything beyond my contractual duties or hours. So for me, that's balance, and I take time to like take care of my physical and mental health throughout the week. I exercise, I read books, I meet friends, and yeah, I think that Korea is a pretty good place to just have a good balance, as long as you're aware of your own limitations. Yeah.
One thing that you would pick that would be different from Korea and working in Canada, besides all the things that we just talked about, what would that be?
So I think maybe one of the biggest differences, if I could choose one of the examples of, from my previous work experience in Korea, I worked at a company where there was a lot of titles, like starting with 사원, 대리, 과장, 차장, like 팀장, 부장, like it's like literally like that doesn't exist in Canada. Like we don't have all of these titles. We just call each other either by our first name or like that's it. I don't know, or Mr. or Mrs. like that, or Sir, I guess. But I mean, to me, like that was the biggest culture shock. I had to memorize like this like hierarchy, and I remember being called like 과장님 for the first time at a company, and like it was so weird. Like I just wanted people to call me by my name or just not call me by anything at all. But yeah, so I think that was the biggest thing.
You put the person's last name first and then their title next. So it would be like you 과장님 or you 팀장님, right?
Yeah.
And that's how we refer to each other, but I didn't even think about that.
Yeah. And it was funny because actually like my coworker who was sitting next to me, she was also 과장님, and so when someone said 과장님, we would both turn around, and it was so stupid, and I was like, why can't we just call each other by our names? But I know that like again, big companies or like startups, younger places or more like forward-looking places, they don't have that whole 직급 thing. They just kind of like they're going for a very horizontal like work culture. But a lot of businesses, like companies, are still, I think, very vertical in their organization. Yeah. So, but it is changing.
It is, and I think that is a big thing that we talked about. Hierarchy is it's the elephant in the room, where do we want to tackle this or do you want to keep this traditional? If there's one thing that you wish somebody told you before you started working in Korea, what would that be?
I think that this is very related to the advice that I gave in my other video about being a kyopo, but learning the language really helps because then you know what is going on and how the company is structured. And because in Korean culture, a lot of things are context and hidden between the lines. So you don't officially, no one gives you like a real lowdown on who to avoid, who's weird, who's difficult, who's like good to trust. That's kind of stuff you have to pick up on your own. And I think a lot of that has to come from your language ability and being able to like really be fast, like reading the room. Having good nunchi, as they say, which is reading the room, is really helpful. And the other advice that I gave was like, just don't try to overcompensate. Like don't try to be too Korean because you're not. And some Korean people are never going to accept you. Like if you're a foreigner, if you're a diaspora, gyopo, or whatever, like no matter how Korean you act, it's like not gonna work. And so I think that's my advice. Like just be you, like be competent, do your job, but don't have to change. You don't have to change yourself, right, to match other people's expectations or what you perceive to be their expectations of you. So you don't need to like do extra hours, try to be like Korean or whatever. Like that's not necessary.
What's next for you, Beth? Any interesting projects coming up?
Yeah, so I just launched I co-launched a books podcast at the Korea Herald, monthly program about Korean literature and books for an English-speaking audience. So we interview authors, we do book reviews, we try to cover anything that is books related for a foreign audience. And I think that these days, we're seeing a lot of really cool stuff going on in that field. Pachinko by Min-jin Lee, who's a Korean-American author. She's gotten her novel adapted for Apple TV. We actually interviewed an author who was nominated for the Booker Prize, Bora Chung. She was shortlisted. And so we really want to just have more conversations with writers and with other book lovers.
Well, there's so much to talk about, Beth. So I look forward to talking with you again next time.
Yeah.
But what do you think? Are you interested in working in Korea? If so, let us know if you have any questions on the comment section below. You can also find Beth on...
you can find me on Twitter at Paper Fetishist. We'll probably spell that out in the description box. And also check out the Korea Herald YouTube. We have a playlist for the podcast.
And there you go. Well, Beth, thank you so much for today, and I hope you enjoyed. We cannot wait to come back with more content for you. So for now, I'm going to say goodbye.
Bye!